You deserved everything you got. This is a union city.
That is a Philadelphia tradition.
Seize the means of podcasting.
Oh God, the boss has crushed us.
Let me tell you one thing else.
In oldie-timey times,
Who said it? Kanye West or Thomas
we
Paine?
will not raw dog reality for that one.
The pleasure of the flesh is in solidarity.
The Scab Buster.
It's gonna be wholly unprofessional.
Eight together strong. Let that be your mantra.
Hello and welcome to the... Shit, I forgot the name of the podcast. Labor John. The Labor John podcast. That is exactly how I started our journey into this world of podcasting, Gabe.
With professionalism and aplomb.
By forgetting the name of the whole operation. But welcome. My name is Sam, and I'm the co-host of this program, and I'm joined today by...
I am Gabe, and I am also the co-host of this program.
And today we're doing something very special. We're re-recording our first two episodes which were about the brief history. It was briefly about the brief history of our briefs. Very good, Gabe. And it's like we've been like podcasting for 2.5 years or something. We catch each other. But the history of Philly labor, and it was kind of like very. We just went over briefly about we hit topics, and we hit strikes, we hit people, and we're gonna do it again, Gabe. But the reason why we like took it off was just because we already talked about this stuff in other episodes in a longer version of it, rather.
Yeah, and I think we've much more come into our own since the first episodes, because lo and behold, you do something for 2.5 years and you get a little bit better at it.
A little bit, tiny bit. We're a little bit better at that. But yeah. So, hello and welcome to the Labor John podcast. We're going to be talking about what, Gabe?
The labor history of Philadelphia.
All right, this is interesting.
And just kind of briefly go over its history from before 1683 up to the modern day.
Okay.
So we have a lot to cover.
You have 5 minutes.
Yeah. So first, we should begin by recognizing that really the area we're talking about is a land to the south of the village of Shakamakson, I believe, was the original Lenape word, or Lenape name for the town, which is now like Port Richmond-y, Kensington-ish area.
I like the original name better.
Yeah. But really,
I like the original inhabitants better too, Gabe.
Yeah.
Have you been to Port Richmond recently? Just racist white guys.
Well, speaking of racist white guys,
here we go. God, here we go.
So this whole region would have originally been referred to as Lenapehoking, and really is still referred to as Lenapehoking, because the Lenape do still exist.
Yes, they do.
And so they were the tribal nation that originally inhabited the Delaware and Schuylkill River valleys. And I also just want to throw out there, if anyone knows of any subject matter experts on the Lenape culture, and especially not necessarily the Lenape economy, but how like internal social structures within Lenape society. I would love to do an episode on that, and to kind of look at it from a labor history, mode of production kind of side.
Damn, all right.
So just putting that out into the ether.
Okay. We're coming in high with this.
Yeah.
We're already begging.
But, well, now moving ahead to the racist white people.
Hey! Now it's a Labor John episode.
Yeah. 17th century Dutch settlers started showing up on the Delaware and set up forts and trading outposts. And then they fought the English in the there were like, I think, 4 separate Anglo-Dutch wars. After the third Anglo-Dutch war, the English ended up, with big air quotes, owning the region. Um, so
That's not good.
yeah, but one of the
Never mind.
So-
Go ahead, Gabe. No, we're not going down that line.
one of the admirals who fought in the Anglo-Dutch War was this guy named Admiral Sir William Penn.
Hey, friend of the show.
Yeah, and he had effectively a fail son, also named William,
Oh, okay.
who was this kind of good-for-nothing Quaker radical that just kind of lived off of daddy's money.
Yeah, I mean, if it's there, Gabe, you might as well live off it. You know what I mean, bud?
But I
Just
should
jealous.
point out, Sir William Penn served both in Cromwell's court,
Oh no.
and then also was probably feeding information to the royalists.
Oh no.
And yeah, he's somehow manages to be on the worst side of everything, which it takes
How do you
skill.
do that?
Um,
That takes skill.
because
I mean,
while
Small round of applause for him, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, that takes, yeah.
while he was probably selling information to the royalists, he also was claiming land holdings in Ireland
Oh,
that
you
belonged to royalists. So he was taken from every pot.
That's all right. All right.
But afterwards, Charles II owed him a fair amount of money, so he gifted him what became known as Pennsylvania.
I love that you can just gift somebody else's land to somebody.
Yeah.
What an interesting concept.
It's funny how that works without any further ramifications.
Oh, this is horrible.
Yeah.
Why did we do this?
Yeah. So, if I remember the history correctly, Admiral Sir William Penn had passed, and the crown owed a debt to his family, and that debt got paid to his son.
Mm-hmm.
So, William Jr. Got gifted what became known as the province of Pennsylvania, or Penn's Woods.
Penn's Woods, yeah.
And then in 1683, he came and laid out what would become Philadelphia. And the original idea was to have this broad city laid out on a perfect grid, with nice wide streets. Everyone would have their own little plot of land, which would be a little square. Basically, every city block was intended to be one single landholding.
Yeah.
And you would have your estate there, a small farm. Then you would have another farm up in the Northern Liberties, and then grazing pastures up in Germantown.
Damn.
That's how it was supposed to be laid out. The idea here was to create a utopian society, because one of the theories, especially among like Quakers that wanted to reshape the world and make everything very egalitarian and peaceful and just and prudent, is that crime and like villainy happened because of dark alleys.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. So
I feel like Mayor Parker is saying the same things right now. It's the alleys, goddamn it, it's the alleys.
So if you don't have like these dark, secluded alleys, then you can't have crime or disease or anything like that. And in terms of like city sanitation, there's probably a point to be made there.
Yeah.
That having broader streets allows more like sanitary flow through.
Yeah.
But
what happened, Gabe?
Didn't really prevent crime. So what happened is Penn laid all of this out, set everything up, and figured, okay, we can just start selling off these parcels of land and we'll be good. So he set the system up to do that, and then fucked off back to England.
Okay. Wait, what?
And then what ended up happening is everyone who came and bought plots of land, then subdivided all of the plots that they bought and sold those. So
that's what's happening now in the city.
Yeah. So very, very quickly, this utopian idea just turned into a like gridded European city full of small row homes with alleys.
No!
And,
You had one job.
Yep.
No alleys.
And also lots of like bar or taverns and bawdy houses and houses of ill repute, which is just brothels. And they got built up basically everywhere almost immediately. So Penn's whole vision of like Philadelphia being this beacon of Quaker temperance and I wasn't really strictly into temperance, but this like Quaker virtue.
He's going in that direction.
Yeah, the city of Quaker morality.
The city of Quaker morality
didn't really happen.
No, it doesn't come off the tongue as like city of brotherly love as much, Gabe.
No. So what did happen though is Philly effectively became an economic powerhouse, because they did keep the whole Quaker idea of like not an egalitarian society, but a very pluralistic society. So whereas a lot of the other colonies you'd have like Maryland was very Catholic, New England was very Protestant. In Pennsylvania you'd have, and they also tended to be very ethnically homogenous. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Philly or in Pennsylvania, you'd have like Germans, Irish, Welsh, English, French, Dutch. Everybody would come and live here.
Gabe, it seems like there's an omission there.
I said
that might begin with Lenny and might end with Lenape.
Oh yeah.
Where are they?
Oh yeah. I forgot about Penn's kids.
Oh no.
So that's the whole other thing. Penn, like, if you are living in Center City, Philadelphia, basically from like Broad Street to the Delaware, and then from Vine Street to South Street.
Okay.
That chunk of land is arguably one of the only sections of North America that was actually like fairly traded for. Because
we're good then.
There's
no white guilt in the city, you're saying.
Oh, we're not good because I live in Germantown and you live in Roxborough.
Shit.
So
there's no white guilt in Roxborough game.
So that section, Penn like did actually make a point of trying to make fair deals with the Lenape. Now Penn's kids didn't necessarily follow their father's morals, and they lied, cheated, and stole as much land as they could, and then conveniently all of the treaties that they signed were burnt in a fire.
What?
And so then they just kind of made up what the treaties were. And that's how you do it.
That is how you do it. That is how you white guy.
Mm-hmm.
That is how you white guy.
And there was the whole like there's the running plot or the walking treaty that they hired relay runners for, and it was the whole thing.
Such bullshit.
Yeah. So basically, if you're living outside of that very specific section of Center City, Philadelphia, it's stolen land. But
okay. All right. Mea culpa.
Yeah. Which is why we should probably more often state the fact that this is being recorded on or in Lenapehoking on land that was acquired through questionable means at best.
Thank you, Gabe.
Yeah. But
am I sorry that I brought it up? No, because I'm bringing this podcast back down to earth, Gabe. This is the shit we needed to be talking about. Make this episode 20 hours long. brief history, my ass.
Another now to get into like the labor side of everything.
There we go. Okay.
So part of having a European city also means that you have poor people.
Okay.
And those poor people had to work to survive.
All right.
And
What a
so you had like the beginning of a working class in the city. Then we should also note that from the get-go, Pennsylvania did allow slavery.
Mhm.
And actually some of the first like public order laws that got passed were, I think there was one in 1724 mandating that even free black citizens in Philadelphia were not allowed to gather after nightfall
What?
because they were afraid of slave rebellions.
Well, I mean, if you have to do that, which side of history are you on, buddy?
Mm-hmm. This is probably some questions you should be asking there.
Oh, this is great. Everybody having a good time? Yeah, y'all good? All right, good.
But there's also there's always a very frustrating and persistent argument that the white people just didn't know better. And like we can't judge them by modern standards. Now, to refute that,
I can't judge the white people of today by modern standards.
I know.
Myself included.
To refute all of that, Philly is kind of cool in that we had one of the first abolitionist decrees in North America.
Okay.
In 1688, so only 5 years after Philadelphia was founded.
There we go.
You had
run.
Petition of Germantown Quakers against slavery. This is going to be an episode at some point. I just haven't gotten around to writing it yet.
This was 2.5 years ago that we recorded this episode.
Yep. So this was 4 dudes up in Germantown who presented their petition to the local meeting. The local meeting looked at it and was like, we don't want to talk about this, so we're going to send it up to the yearly meeting in Philly. Right. And then the yearly meeting looked at it and said, we don't want to talk about this. So they sent it up to the yearly meeting in London.
What? London?
Yep.
Right.
So the way the Quaker meetings were organized, it was like each one was kind of an independent council. And then the London yearly meeting was still like the biggest one, and that had presidings over everything. So the Philadelphia yearly meeting said they would send it to the London yearly meeting. There's no record of the London yearly meeting ever receiving it or discussing it.
It's those damn fires, Gabe.
Yep.
Those damn fires. Those insurance scam fires.
Yeah. There were also some cool like early radicals, like Benjamin Lay, who was a little person disabled lay preacher.
Oh my God. God bless him.
Who he was also a radical abolitionist.
Fuck me.
Who did some really cool direct action to protest slavery.
Okay.
Shit like laying naked at the door of a meeting house so that everyone had to step over him.
Yeah, I remember this.
Which is like, that's fucking great. And then
that is direct action.
Yeah.
That is where you go. I wasn't sold like all the die-ins and everything, but if you laid there naked, that's a different story.
I mean, yeah.
That's what you got to do, buddy.
It'll get people's attention. Now there was Pennsylvania is also kind of weird in how it was governed because it had its own legislature and like official government body that passed laws for the whole province. But then you also had all of the Quaker meetings that acted as like mini independent governments
Okay.
for all of the Quaker members.
Yeah.
And their only actual authority there was to, but basically like excommunicate people from the meeting. But
Okay.
when you're in a situation where like all of the wealthy people in the town are Quakers and members of the meeting,
Yeah.
and you
There
get
you go.
excommunicated, you can't buy anything.
Oh,
So like
no.
you're basically ostracized from community or from communal life. So
I mean,
uh,
like, the working people of this country are essentially excommunicated.
yeah. Yeah, and that like, and especially in this period.
I love just coming up with bullshit and just throwing it in your court.
I
And
mean,
be
you're
like,
not
"Yeah,
wrong.
here you go, Gabe."
Then, so in like the 1760s, there were moves from the Philadelphia Yearly Meeting to like strongly encourage manumission of slaves. So it was basically saying like, if you're a Quaker and you're a member of the meeting and you own slaves, you should probably like set them free eventually.
Oh, it was like a nudge and like a whisper, like, "Hey, man, you
Yeah.
shouldn't be doing this."
And then by 1780, they officially outlawed the import of new slaves and decreed that no one would be born into slavery after that date.
Okay.
Now, you'll
Yeah.
notice
Yeah.
that meant if you were born a slave prior to the born into slavery prior to the enactment of that law, then that your status would continue.
You can't have everything you want, Gabe. In
Yeah.
this life. I
But
mean, that's
yeah,
horrible.
yeah,
It's like they're trying to find. It's like they're trying to be moral, but they're just not getting there.
yeah.
They're like half steps. Everything's half steps.
It's very much like they recognize there's a right and a wrong thing to do, but they also recognize that the wrong thing is making them all a lot of money.
Yeah, and it hurts the bottom line if they act a little more moral.
Yeah, and that situation will never come up again. So,
hey.
Now we'll move on from slavery to something a little bit more fun, which is the beginning of industrialized capitalism.
Oh shit!
In the 1790s, when a man named John Nicholson.
Hey,
Yeah.
Sam remembers some shit.
Tried to set up a factory.
Yeah.
On the banks of the Schuylkill, and that went interestingly.
Mm-hmm. It's not there. It didn't happen, did it, Gabe?
No. Well, it did happen, and then stopped happening kind of quickly. Lo and behold, people like to be paid.
Hey, there we go.
And not in pocketbooks.
Yeah. That's a call forward.
Yeah. But yeah, so basically John Nicholson he set up a very big factory that was producing both like glass, bricks,
Okay,
knit goods, all sorts of stuff, and then mismanaged his finances, and his workers kept going on strike over unpaid wages, and then finally it all shut down.
Yeah, I totally forgot that it came like the factory actually was in operation, but he wasn't a very good businessman, was he?
No, he wasn't.
No, there you go.
And the paying in books thing, one of the things that they would do is in lieu of payment, you would get paid in company credit, which you could then spend at the company store in exchange and purchase like pocketbooks, like pocket novels. And then you would take those novels to a pawnbroker in the city and exchange them for actual money.
There is a simpler way.
There's a much simpler way.
Just don't tell him. It's a lot more funny if he doesn't know.
And that's what the prevailing theory is as to how this worked. But that theory is based mainly off of the fact that multiple workers showed in their ledgers that they were purchasing multiple copies of the same book.
Oh God.
And there's no real reason for that to be happening unless, I mean, maybe they were like, they had lots of readers in their family, but
It's a good book, Abe.
Yeah.
It's a good book.
Then at the same time as John Nicholson setting up his factory, you have the Federal Society of Journeyman Cordwainers of Philadelphia.
There we go.
Which was all of the journeymen who were like effectively workers that owned some of their own tools and would hire themselves out.
Yeah. They're not masters yet.
Yeah. So they went on strike, or they formed effectively an illegal union in 1796 and went on strike a couple of times, mostly over the wages and hours, and specifically relating to the making of quote-unquote slave shoes, which was, and this is another thing tying Pennsylvania back to slavery.
We were past slavery, Gabe.
It's true.
You promised us. You promised us, buddy.
The one of the funky things that happens when you have a slave economy anywhere is that all of the surrounding economies then realize that it's really profitable to deal with the slave economy.
Yeah.
So slave shoes was part of the export market in Philadelphia, where it was basically really cheaply made, poor quality shoes that would get shipped en masse down to the Caribbean and distributed to the enslaved workers on the Caribbean sugar islands. Because one of the side effects of effectively monocropping an entire island with sugarcane is that there is physically not enough space to actually sustain the population there.
So
yeah.
So
Then you have to import everything. And that's what they did.
All right, Gabe.
And so the masters would, initially it was set up that like you could voluntarily take on slave shoes as an extra side gig.
Oh my God.
And then the masters kept like just adding on more orders and then reducing the number of local shoes that you would be making, because you would get paid more to make a like good quality pair of shoes for a customer.
Yeah.
And the masters kept taking away how much the journeymen would make for local customers and giving them more slave shoe orders. And so that's what they were complaining about. So they went on strike a couple of times, and then in 1806 got sued for conspiracy to fix prices. And they lost that case.
Mm-hmm.
And,
of course they did.
Yeah. And that basically made unions illegal in North America, or in the United States, for like
forever.
40 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So unions were illegal, but working class folks in Philly then shifted to trying to be political. So in 1828, they founded the Working Man's Party of Philadelphia, which was like a sort of utopian socialist party.
I like
and
it.
Yeah, they also created the General Trades Union of Philadelphia,
the GTU,
and basically started to do like both political and and labor organizing.
I like it.
All of that leading up to the 1835 Philadelphia General Strike.
Yeah,
the first general strike in North America.
Yay! In Philadelphia.
Yay! And that's where you had like tens of thousands of workers, all strike in solidarity with coal passers on the Schuylkill, demanding a 10-hour wage or 10-hour day, and they won. And got a 10-hour day basically across the whole city,
There we go.
which
It's
is
like
really
this shit
cool.
works or something.
Yeah. And now that everybody's excited, we got to give them another downer.
Oh God, slavery.
Uh-huh. So in the 1820s and 30s, you also had a series of anti-black race riots,
Oh my God.
where there was the immediate abolition movement, where basically black people and anyone else with a conscience was demanding an immediate end to slavery.
You're so impartial, Gabe.
Yeah. And this included the destruction of Philadelphia or Pennsylvania Hall, which was supposed to be effectively a black and abolitionist community center in the city. So Pennsylvania Hall opened its doors on May 14th, 1838. It was burnt to the ground on May 17th, 1838.
Damn.
So, yeah.
Damn.
That's going to have its own episode at some point.
Very short episode.
Yeah.
God.
But we're just going to keep plowing on through.
Hey.
And get to the...
In our slave shoes.
Yeah. Now post-Civil War, Emancipation Proclamation.
Everything's fine then, Gabe.
Yep, we fixed it.
Lincoln fixed it, goddammit.
Oh, yeah. You get the Noble and Holy Order of the Knights of Labor.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah, established.
They have their own problems, but I have I have a soft spot for the Knights of Labor. I really do. For Powderly and all at the gag.
They are very much like problematic heartthrobs.
Yeah, there we go.
They get so close.
Yeah, I know.
To doing cool shit, and then just nope. So they were established in 1869 by a bunch of tailors up in Kensington, and they initially started as a secret organization, but very quickly spread across the country, and then really went public in 1877 with the Great Railroad Strike. Yeah. And so that was led by the Knights of Labor, and was started out as a fairly small strike down in West Virginia, and then turned into almost a working class rebellion, or very close to one across the entire country.
Leave it to the Knights.
Yeah. And in Reading specifically, Reading, Pennsylvania, you had workers effectively shutting down every rail line into and out of the city, and the railroad responded to that by calling in the state militia.
Of course.
And a company from Allentown came in.
I'm preparing my body for this one, Gabe.
And opened fire on some of the striking workers.
Yeah.
After the workers were throwing rocks at a train car, if I remember correctly.
Oh, that's
so fully justified.
Yes, totally justified.
Yeah. So the guys from Allentown opened fire on them, and killed a few of them, and that set off even more insurrection in the city, because that pissed everybody off. So then they called in the state militia, or another state militia company from Conshohocken.
Here we go.
And the Conchi boys showed up.
The Conchi boys.
And they had heard about what happened with the guys from Allentown, and said, fuck that. And gave their arms and ammunition over to the strikers, and started drinking with them in the streets of Reading.
Fucking baller.
Yes.
These are my heroes.
Yep.
I dream about these about this group of men every single night.
If anyone ever wants to do a living history commemoration of this,
God, yes,
I would gladly get a group of people together for this because it would be fucking great. And it would just be day drinking in
Yeah.
historical kit in downtown Reading. Like,
Oh my god,
it sounds awesome.
that is delicious.
So then federal troops got called in.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have all the fun.
Yeah. But they didn't kill anyone. They just disarmed
Hey!
them. So like,
Hey, there we go.
yeah. Then
Net positive.
yeah. So then throughout the rest of the 19th century, you had a lot of tension up in the coal fields in eastern PA around the anthracite, specifically with the Molly Maguires.
There we go.
And
They need their own season.
oh yeah, there's going to be a couple episodes. But so they were it's hard to tell how much is true versus how much was like yellow journalism about them.
Okay.
But it was a secret organization or a secret Irish Republican organization that kind of transformed into a working class organization in the US or in Pennsylvania. And there was some mild sabotage that happened to mining equipment.
Yeah.
In the anthracite, and some bombings, and it's hard to tell. And there was very flimsy evidence tying anyone to any of this.
Yeah.
But a number of the Molly Maguire, or a number of people got hanged as accused Molly Maguires. And so that kind of broke that up, unfortunately. But
yeah. I mean, it wouldn't.
yeah,
That would.
there's a significant crackdown on that. And then you did, as we discussed in a recent episode, you did then have the 1887 and 1888 mine and rail strikes against the Reading Railroad. And
where people just were standing around rail yards.
Yeah.
With nothing to do.
The chillest strike.
The chillest strike.
You just hang out, man. It's fine. And then but that was also all up through the coal fields. They were on strike. But that kind of set the stages for further labor radicalism up in the coal fields. Then in the city proper, you had a lot of different like radical and anarchist organizations starting to pop up. And this is one of the things that makes Philly distinct from New York, is that up in New York City, while you did have a strong anarchist movement there, the socialist and social democratic movement really took hold much earlier and kind of led the way.
Okay.
Whereas in Philly, you had much more of an anarchist presence.
Yeah. We got nothing better to do.
Yeah.
Than nothing.
And we can't follow in New York's footsteps. Like we got to do our own thing.
Yeah.
Got to be a little bit different down here.
We're not just another borough.
Yeah. So you have like the cloak makers striking in 1890, led by a bunch of Yiddish anarchists. You had a bunch of anarchist doctors setting up free clinics around the city. And it seems to be that like Philly got the German anarchists and New York got all the German socialists, from what I can tell. And then that turned into all of the Jewish anarchists followed suit, and then Jewish socialists went to New York.
All right.
And both groups hated each other.
Of course.
Yeah. Because leftist infighting has been going on forever. Now, I want to talk about labor lyceums. because they showed up around this period. Which I also need to do an episode on the guy that started the Labor Lyceum movement.
Yes, you do, Gabe. On the guy.
It was literally like one German labor agitator, who I guess, to disprove my previous statement, he was a German socialist, not an anarchist, but regardless.
All right. We just lost all credibility, Gabe.
Exactly. So he was a German socialist, kept getting kicked out of different cities in Germany.
I love that.
And then ended up in Philly. And
we would take him.
Oh, yeah.
We would be like, yes, come into my bosom.
And so he ran a German socialist newspaper, the Philadelphia Tagesblatt, for a while.
Damn, okay.
And then retired to be an innkeeper and just tended bar for the rest of his life.
Hey, man, I feel like that's my trajectory, too.
I mean, it's a pretty good life.
I mean, I'll take it.
So he, but he also had the idea to create the labor lyceums, or a labor lyceum, which is basically like a big speaking hall.
Yeah.
But specifically for workers. So the first one was built in 1889. Then they built another one in Kensington in 1895. And I think 2 or 3 more were built throughout the city over the next decade. And these were just like, it was a big meeting place for workers, for all different types of workers.
Yeah. Just like hashing shit out. Yeah.
And you'd have like big speeches and rallies there, and just kind of a cool free place to hang out. They also served as strike headquarters a lot. Then moving into the 1900s, finally.
Hey, we were born somewhere in there, Gabe.
Yeah. You have the March of the Mill Children in 1903.
Oh my God, I didn't know the March of the Mill Children in 1903 bored you so much, Gabe.
It does. It's very boring.
Fucking children. Mother Jones was like, how long do I have to take care of these goddamn kids?
Oh my God. Mother Jones,
yeah.
I think, was truly the embodiment of like the stereotype of endless mom energy.
Oh God.
Because the woman just did not slow down.
She did not slow down. She's still going.
Oh yeah. She's still marching. Like,
she's buried, but she's still going.
Oh yeah. But yeah, so she led a bunch of workers.
If I see Mother Jones skeleton walking down the street of Philadelphia tomorrow with a bunch of children, I'm going to ask for an autograph.
That would make a great mummers group.
They would not touch that, Gabe.
No, they wouldn't.
Which is weird because of the things they have. Taken a part of and put on their bodies over the years.
It's not nearly racist enough. So
no, it is not.
But
we're joking with the mummers, by the way.
Yeah.
They're not all bad. Some of you got to calm the fuck down, though.
Yeah. Also, I lived on Snyder Ave for like 5 years.
God, Gabe, you know it. You know it, bud.
See, if you don't live in South Philly, you think that the Mummers Parade is one day. It's not.
No.
It is a week. Because first you have like 3 days of practice, which still involves day drinking.
Copious amounts of drinking.
Because if you're going to be marching and performing drunk, you have to practice how you play.
Yes, exactly.
So it just makes sense. And then you have the parade, and then you have like 3 days after of just celebrating the parade.
We got through this.
Yeah. But
I mean, fair. That is a lot of work they put into it.
Yeah. I will say it is entertaining because you can see like they get more and more costumed leading up to the parade.
Yeah.
And then less and less costumed.
They're just shedding it on the streets.
Yeah. Until by the end of it.
Yeah. 2 streets just looks like a wardrobe. Just strode across.
Effectively. So then we're jumping ahead to the 1910 shirtwaist strike.
All right.
With the
I remember my dumbass asked what a shirtwaist was on like the first or second. It was the third episode.
Yeah.
And I was like, is it a shirt that stops at the waist? Or is it a waist of shirts? This is when I had worse jokes than I do now, Gabe. This is why we're not why we're re-releasing every episode. I'm taking out everything that I ever said. It's just gonna be Gabe.
To be fair, shirtwaist is a weird word.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Gabe. You could have said that back then.
Yeah. They're just blouses.
Okay, they're just black.
Yeah.
That makes it so much better.
Yeah.
Be a man, wear a blouse.
Exactly. So shirtwaist workers up in New York City were on strike. Bosses shifted production down to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Then Philly went on strike and ended up doing better than the strike up in New York.
Uh-huh.
And you had like Taft's daughter going out raising money on the picket line. A bunch of students from Bryn Mawr College got arrested. It was like a lot of cool shit happening in that.
It was the last time any college kids got arrested for any good reason.
Yeah, it hasn't happened since. Definitely not in Pennsylvania. Then we have the first strike in Major League Baseball's history in 1912.
Gabe. Is this a Samisode?
It is a Samisode.
Oh my god. I'm so honored. I'm so honored that you're talking about an episode that I actually researched, quote unquote.
It's an important piece of Philly history.
It is.
That with the Tigers, I can't remember.
Yeah, it was the Detroit Tigers and the Philadelphia Athletics.
Yeah. And Tigers went on strike, and then they tried to like just grab people off the street to make a scab team.
They literally recruited like kids. I mean, like these like 20-year-olds off the street, and they were not baseball players. Gabe,
nope.
2 of them were boxers. One was just like a gambler.
Wasn't there a priest?
Yes, Alan Travers was. Well, at the time, he wasn't a priest. He was in seminary or whatever. He was training, and but he was not a pitcher. He was I think he was the scorekeeper or something on I think St. Joe's. I'm not whatever college he was at.
Yeah.
But he was not a pitcher. They put him in to pitch. the final score of the game between the Philadelphia Athletics, which was like one of the best baseball teams at the time, being run by one of the greatest managers of the time, Connie Mack. Against them, the North Philadelphia Scabs, or the Ball Breakers, as I call them. Mm-hmm. I think the game was like 26-2 or something. It was so bad. They got slaughtered. Yeah,
it was very, very strange, weird moment in Philly labor history.
It was strange just from the beginning because they went on strike. The Tiger players went on strike because their teammate Ty Cobb was suspended because he beat the shit out of a disabled fan. A fan who did not have a second hand got his shit kicked by probably the greatest baseball player at the time. And they're like, yeah, you're out, buddy.
Yeah.
So that's, to
be fair, a disabled fan who was like hurling racial slurs.
He did. Yeah. He did call him a half N-word. So,
which, yeah.
Goddamn.
Well, now moving on from that to a class of or a story of interracial worker solidarity.
There we go.
In 1913, Ben Fletcher and the dock workers in Philly organized the Marine Transport Workers Industrial Union Local Number 8.
Hey!
Which is a radical...
I'm sorry, you said International Workers of the World, right?
Uh-huh, yes.
Okay, good. I'm just making sure.
Yeah. Which is organized with the industrial workers of the world.
Oh, what? What? I think you're wrong, Gabe. You got to check your notes, buddy.
You're probably right. But they, so it was an interracial, multi-ethnic, and multilingual union.
Yeah.
That basically ran the Philadelphia docks from 1913 into the 1920s.
I love that. I love that a union can just fucking run the docks. That's
Yeah.
so fucking sexy, Gabe.
And one of my favorite things about that is that during, like, Philly was a major naval port during World War One, where a lot of ships were coming into Philly to get like refit and prepared for war.
Yeah.
And the local number 8 had organized all of the workers down at the Philadelphia Navy Yard. So the Navy had to go and ask this radical anarcho-syndicalist union for workers
Oh God, yes.
to get the fleet together for World War One.
I love that.
Which is just, yeah.
Can we have our toys, please?
Yeah. Which is just great. So then you also have like the 1917 sugar strike in Philly, where a bunch of sugar workers went on strike with support from Local 8.
And they were against the sugar snipers, of course.
Yes.
The things I remember about these episodes, Gabe.
Where you had
the sound bites.
Yeah. A massive street fight in South Philly, which included sugar snipers.
Snipers on top of the buildings who were they cops, or were they just people the company hired?
They were private security from a detective agency that the company hired. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
The cops also opened fire on the crowd, but they just had pistols.
Oh,
so it's fine.
It's fine.
And then
if it's small arms, it's fine, Gabe.
Yeah. So yeah, you had big street fights. Surprisingly, only one person got killed.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But you had 10,000 people attend his funeral.
Yeah.
Which is just insane to think about. But also in 1917, we have the Russian Revolution.
No, I don't remember this part, Gabe.
Well, this didn't happen in Philly, but it affected things in Philly. So this kind of ended up splitting the left over how we respond, or how they would respond to it.
Yeah.
And you ended up like moving forward from the 20s to the 30s. The labor movement and the left in Philly, you had wobblies, so people associated with the IWW, socialists, which were either independent or were in independent unions, or in socialist unions that were affiliated with the AFL.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had communists, who sometimes, depending on what period of communism we're talking about, might be connected to progressive AFL unions, or were setting up their own radical unions. Then within the AFL, you had, or the American Federation of Labor, you had conservative AFL unions that were just like the normal, the old-timey, just get a raise in wages every year, and that's it.
That's all we're here for.
Yeah. Then you had progressive AFL unions that weren't necessarily like revolutionary or socialist or communist, and they were like, well, maybe we'll get better conditions, and we might do some politicking as well. Mm-hmm. And then you had socialist AFL unions, which were like, we'll affiliate with the AFL, but we don't agree with them on their political stances, and we'll take an active role in politics. Then you also had independent unions that weren't affiliated with anyone. It's all complicated. But a lot of stuff happened in the 20s, but we're already almost at an hour, so I'm going to skip ahead to the Great Depression.
Oh God, we did this back then too.
Yep. There's a lot to cover.
Stop skipping to the Great Depression, Gabe.
So stock market crashed, fucked everything up, and people were really poor. But that also led to a lot of radical organizing. So like communists were organizing the unemployed. Socialist unions were getting increasingly radical, and doing a lot, or going on strike. Then in 1935, you had the Congress of Industrial Organizations was formed out of a number of AFL unions in Atlantic City, which is close enough that we can do an episode on it.
Yes, that's ours.
Yeah. And ignore the fact that there's an entire 20-part podcast series by Haymarket Books all about the CIO. But we're going to do one episode just on the founding, which is the most important part.
And listen to ours.
Yeah. It'll
be a train wreck.
Yeah. It started with a fist fight in Atlantic City, as all good things do. So
I think that's how Donald Trump was born. A fist fight in Atlantic City.
That's exactly it. Then so CIO did even more kind of radical direct action. And you had the first sit-down strike on the East Coast.
Okay.
When the Exide battery plant was occupied in 1937. Then, with less than a year, or about a year after that, you had the Apex hosiery strike of 1938, where 300 workers occupied the plant for a month. And you regularly had 5,000 people picketing out front of the plant, because at this point the CIO in Philly was just incredibly powerful, and had tens of thousands of members in the city.
Okay.
And they would all show up for each other.
Good.
So then, during World War II, there was a decrease in union activity because they had established a union peace during the war, or a labor peace, and that was to get everyone into the war effort.
Come on, everybody!
Yeah,
I mean, it was for killing Nazis. So
I can't
forgivable.
Yeah, but then you did have the 1944 transit strike.
Unforgivable.
Yeah, where I think it was about 2,000 white workers had a sick-out strike to protest the possibility of 8 black workers getting promoted to drive trolleys.
It's incredible. We bring this episode up a lot because it's there's good and the bad.
Yeah,
this is the bad.
Yeah,
this is the bad.
But it led to Transit Workers United becoming the main bargaining unit for transit workers in Philly.
Yeah.
And their union still exists today. So
they do.
In the long run, it worked.
And there's some more strikes in there that we could probably tackle as well.
Oh, yeah. Philadelphia Transit and then leading into SEPTA is known for having some of the most labor troubles of any transit agency, which is saying something because transit agencies have lots of labor troubles. Then after the war, huge strike wave across the country. In Philly, you had the GE and Westinghouse strike, big street battle with United Electrical Workers going up against the cops. And you also started to see the flying column tactic, where you drive around and hop off and picket a place until the cops show up, and then hop back in a car and drive away.
I love that. I love when people are fucking smart, Yeah. When they use tactics.
Yeah. No, they got really inventive. Then the Taft-Hartley Act in 1947 basically kicked out everyone who had good ideas in the labor movement.
Yeah.
So that was bad. But in the 50s and 60s, you had the rise of the civil rights movement, and that intersected with the labor movement in multiple ways. And you had folks like Bayard Rustin and Kiyoshi Kanemaru fighting for black and gay rights, respectively. And still haven't quite found, or I still haven't found any hard evidence of whether or not they had met. But
you know what? I don't know.
They must have.
That's one of those things where it's like they must have, but it's like because I wasn't as familiar with Bayard Rustin when I was doing the episode, so maybe he showed up, but I didn't give him the time of day as I should have. But yeah, I mean, like there's a couple other gay rights activists in Philly that I do want to tackle, maybe that I should have tackled. If we ever like go back to Kiyoshi, like the people who put on the annual reminders every year, which was in right outside Independence Hall, I believe.
Yeah.
They staged a protest in the '60s for gay rights. But yeah, Kiyoshi, I mean, gay rights is labor rights is black rights is labor rights. So
yeah. I need to do more research into it, but there was also a lot of like there were a lot of reform movements of the AFL-CIO coming out of Philly because you still had a lot of very racist unions.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of black workers in Philly that were pushing for internal reform in the 60s. Then 1975, you had the first time public employees struck en masse with the 1975 AFSCME strike, where municipal employees across Pennsylvania went on strike against the state. And that was the episode I realized we did twice. It was a good episode, so we did it again.
Here we go, baby.
Then we're going to go back to sports for the 1987 NFLPA strike.
Hey, there we go.
Which, to be honest, wasn't a big moment in labor history writ large, but none of the Eagles crossed the picket line.
There we go. But who did?
It was the Cowboys, right?
It was the Cowboys. Yeah. Maybe it was Dallas.
The entire team crossed.
Yeah.
So
I think like out of because it was a league wide strike, I think it was the Cowboys had the most scabs who crossed people who crossed the picket line.
Yeah.
Figures.
Yeah.
It's all right. We have to put in. We can't pull punches when it comes to Dallas.
No,
because we're a Philly podcast. Doesn't even matter if you watch football.
And that also provided an opportunity for like the entire Philly labor movement to show up and effectively take out all of their aggression against the Reagan administration on people trying to get into Veterans Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, these were people just trying to watch a game, which I understand, but I mean, like maybe a little solidarity.
Yeah,
I don't think Teamsters need to be beating up on little old ladies and shit.
I also think the news was definitely selecting people to interview there.
Oh yeah.
However,
but I mean, we do have to bring up the best part of that strike, Gabe.
The Scab Buster.
The Scab Buster.
Yeah.
We got a lot of mileage out of bringing up the Scab Buster.
I mean, it is iconic.
Yeah.
A 1985 white Ford Bronco.
Timely.
Oh, yeah. Decked out in Eagles garb with a giant sign on the front saying Scab Buster.
I think that was actually Jody Schultz, who was the linebacker at the time. I think that was his truck, actually.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a picture of him, and I forget who else, with like riot helmets on, like police riot helmets on.
Oh, yeah.
And toy Uzis that look real, and they're just on the picket line, just there.
Mm-hmm.
That was a crazy strike.
Yeah, they had. I think it was like the first day of the strike. They had water guns for some reason.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah,
but they were like painted black.
Yeah, like
there are pictures of this.
It's a weird thing.
I can't find them. I think they got scrubbed or something. But
yeah, they're probably still in the Inquirer. Got to go back through. But
yeah.
Then you also had the game opening to people holding up a banner saying "This is sad." just oh god.
That's Philly.
Oh yeah. All right. Now moving into like actual important labor history shit.
Here we go.
In the 90s, you had kind of a rank and file resurgence in the labor movement and in Philly. One of the biggest things was the Teamsters in their 1997 strike, which was a nationwide strike. Did happen in Philly too, but this was the first test of Teamsters for a Democratic Union, which was their reform caucus. And this is also where you had UPS allegedly grabbing unhoused people off the street and making them work in packaging facilities. So
I know when you went through it, it didn't sound very unalleged, Gabe. It sounded like very alleged. That shit happened.
Yeah, there multiple people, multiple eyewitnesses claim to have seen like branded UPS vans too, picking up people off the street, which is just, if you're gonna do it, rent a van.
I know, right?
Like,
hey, they got the van, Gabe. You know.
Yeah.
Oh God.
But now we're gonna skip right ahead to 2020 and the impact of COVID.
Oh, here we go.
Because you saw there's been a little bit of an uptick in the labor movement in the last 4 years.
A little bit, Gabe.
Just a little bit.
I think partially we're to blame for that.
I think you're right.
Yeah. It didn't seem this all started when we started this podcast.
Yeah. It's not that we started the podcast in response to it.
Who came first?
Yeah.
We were the chicken and the egg, Gabe.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know.
It's been a long day.
Yeah, try doing something with that motherfucker.
So you had nurses at St. Mary's Medical Center in Langhorne, Pennsylvania, went on strike in 2020, demanding more staffing. Because one of the things that happened is throughout the whole, like basically since Reagan, hospitals have increasingly cut staffing and increased beds. So you have more patients and fewer staff.
Interesting.
Which means you have less time to spend with each patient, and the staff that you do have are like overworked and underpaid.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's what you want in your medical system. And so they were demanding safe staffing and better wages. And since then, there have been multiple other nurses' strikes across Philly. I think there was one at Temple just a couple weeks ago.
Rightfully so. I mean, they get the shaft.
Yeah. And it's basically COVID kind of brought a lot of this to light because you had so many people hospitalized so quickly.
Yeah. They pushed it to the limit.
Yeah. And it showed that the hospital administrations had been cutting costs for decades. And then the people, aside from the patients, the people most affected by it were the nurses.
Of course.
And then we also had workers at the Philadelphia Museum of Art.
Hey, okay.
Organized the first...
Respectfully, friends of the show.
Yes.
And honestly, friends of the show.
Yeah. Who organized the first wall-to-wall museum union in the U.S.
There we go.
And they went on strike after over 2 years of stalled negotiations, and won after just 19 days.
There we go.
I think it's fair to say that we can take credit for that from your memes.
The memes. Because the countless memes that we made.
That
we have contributed absolutely everything to that. We should have got something out of that contract.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're right. We need to start charging for meme production here.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Then you also had so the Starbucks Workers United and all of the cafe organizing going on across the country is taking a slightly different shape in Philly, and a cool shape, with Workers United Local 80 Joint Board, or the joint. I don't remember what the official title is because it's long and complicated.
That's your job, Gabe. You
I
that,
know.
right?
I could look it up, but it's 10 o'clock at night and I'm tired. So
We love you, listeners.
yeah. All right. Let me look it up.
Oh God, here we go.
Workers United Local 80.
Philadelphia Joint Board. That's it, right?
Yeah, it's the Philadelphia Joint Board of Workers United. And they organized Local 80, which is the general union for all cafe, coffee roasters. I think there's still one pizza place, bakeries, like any small food service. So they're basically doing industrial sector organizing of the whole like small cafe industry in Philly.
Yeah,
which is really cool.
Interesting to watch.
Yeah, and speaking of, they Bluestone Lane should be voting on, or some of the Bluestone Lane cafes should be voting on their union soon. So all power to them. And it's also interesting to see another major chain getting organized. So that's kind of cool.
That's true. That's true.
And then you also have the WGA strike, the Workers Guild or the Writers Guild, which picketed out front of Comcast a couple of times. So we can claim that as a Philly labor history moment.
All right.
But then more recently, you've had a lot of rank and file organizing around Palestine solidarity.
Yeah.
And like we talked to the folks from Green for Palestine. And it's interesting to see a new rank and file movement pop up around that. And it's from every sector, multiple different unions, but all coming together for a common cause.
Yeah.
And that is roughly a very broad history of the labor movement.
I think we did it better than the first time, Gabe.
I think so. It's definitely more. This was definitely more thorough.
It was more thorough
than the first time.
I mean, rightfully so. We did go through all this shit.
Yeah, we've also done
singularly
60 some odd episodes.
Yeah, right. But yeah. But yeah, next up is episode 66. We've been here a while, Gabe.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride.
It has been, and it continues to be a fun ride.
Amen, brother.